Welcome to the MHP Exchange Podcast, where industry veterans Frank Rizzo and Eric Busadil generously share their wealth of knowledge in their new podcast dedicated to the manufactured housing space. They tackle tough questions to provide valuable insights for those considering investments in mobile home parks. If you're seeking answers in the manufactured housing space, this podcast is your go-to resource.
And we're back on the MHP Exchange Podcasts. I am your host, Frank Rizzo. Joining me is the often imitated, never duplicated, my friend, my partner, Eric Busadil. How are you this morning?
Good, Frank.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You excited?
Yeah.
We have a big program, really informative show today with a real special guest. But before we do that, the MHP Exchange Podcast is brought to you by the MHPExchange.com. That is your one source for opportunity, news, education, and entertainment. So if you're looking for more information about mobile home park investing, check out the MHPExchange.com. So with that, and before we get started and before we introduce our guest, I have a pop quiz for you this morning, E.
Oh, do you?
Are you ready? Did you have your coffee? Are you ready for this pop quiz?
No.
Okay. Well, here's the pop quiz. What are the 4 reasons or the 4 benefits? How about that? What are the 4 benefits of investment property, investment real estate? What's the 4 benefits of that?
Cash flow.
Okay. That's it. That's a good one. Right? That's the main benefit, right? You want to have cash flow, right? That's huge. So,
Principal reduction.
that's a great point. I mean, if you buy an investment property and you have a mortgage, you don't have to put, the beauty of real estate is leverage. You don't have to put all the money down yourself. You get a lender to finance that. And then the beauty of it is that your residents, your tenants, they're paying down the principal, which you can recapture later, which is fantastic. So that's the second benefit.
Tax benefits.
Well, you missed another benefit in between there. I said 4.
What's the other one?
Appreciation.
Appreciation.
Right? But yes, appreciation, obviously.
No patience, this guy.
But
Patience.
the a big benefit that doesn't get talked about enough, I don't think, because it's, and I don't say this, it's probably not the sexiest part of it, right? When people are talking about buying a property, it's finding a property. What did I buy it for? How am I turning it around? I mean, that's like a sexy part of it. But the real meat and potatoes behind it is the tax benefits and how you can go and really shelter a lot of income, right? And that's the beautiful thing about creating the wealth in the space. And with that, we probably have the foremost expert on cost segregating your mobile home park investment, and that's Eden Markowitz with Madison SPECS. So Eden, how are you today?
I'm good. Did you just call me not sexy?
Yeah. Well, listen, that door.
Smart.
I didn't say you're not sexy either. I said this isn't the sexiest part of it. But I'll leave the sexiness to your wife. She can determine that. Listen, my mom tells me I'm beautiful every day, so we'll take it from there.
All right.
How are you today?
I'm pretty good. Can't complain. Summertime in Dallas, Texas. It's hot as hell, but we're surviving. From the car to the pool, back in the car to the air conditioning, just surviving the summer.
Perfect. And so, Eden, and before we delve into, cost segregation and your expertise in that, for the people out there who are listening, because you've got a really interesting story of how you even got to this point. So, how did you start out just on this path? Because you're not, technically speaking, you weren't trained. You didn't start out looking to get into real estate and or cost segregation, right?
Did not, no.
So, why don't you share with us your story?
So I, after I got married, I lived in California for a year in Los Angeles area. Was opportunity to teach and learn a little bit. My wife was working for a family as a personal assistant. It kind of fell into our laps. We planned on moving to Israel actually right after we got married, and we got a fantastic opportunity to live in California and made some money, was able to pocket some extra cash for a down payment on an apartment in Israel. So that was, kind of like my view of it was a gift from God, because it wasn't part of the plan. And we went there expecting to make a certain amount of money and we made like 3 to 4x that amount of money in that first year, and then use that cash to go move to Israel and buy an apartment. So the plan in Israel for me was to, I'd already finished my undergrad in psychology. I wanted to continue studying Jewish studies to become a rabbi and to teach. So we moved to Israel, studying, teaching at night, mentoring people. And that lasted for about 4 years. We really wanted to stay in Israel. We were comfortable. We had family there, bought an apartment and everything. But ultimately, my wife never finished her graduate degree, and it was like challenging to do that in Israel. She had an undergrad in speech therapy. So the move was to move back to America to, my passion was Jewish outreach and educating people who, knew they're Jewish, but didn't know much about Israel, about the religion, about the culture. So I moved back originally to Great Neck, New York, took a position as a rabbi, an outreach rabbi, teaching public school students, young professionals, all different ages, all different classes throughout the day. We had a lunch and learn program for public school students where like 150 kids would come to my class during their lunch period for food and a study session. So it was great. I did that for 2 years and then moved to California again and took another outreach position where we take about 50 guys and girls aged 22 to 32 to Israel on a free Israel trip. You may have heard of like a birthright program where people get a free trip to Israel. This is kind of like a post-birthright trip to Israel, like more educational and a little bit deeper. So we would take 50 students twice a year to Israel, and my job was the follow-up afterwards. So I'd meet with, a lot of people during the week, study with them, mentor, answer any questions they had. And then we had like really big Friday night, we have the Sabbath on Friday nights. And I'd have, between 20 and 40 guests at my house every Friday night for a meal and some drinks and a good time just to celebrate the Sabbath. So, it was busy, it was fun, and it was great. And eventually, it's still my passion, but, financially, I knew I wanted to do something else to be able to support. The family was growing and, I was making it by, but I really wanted to be a little bit more established. So I actually moved out from California to Dallas to work in the nursing home administration business. That's how I got here. Long story, but I ended up here. And that just wasn't a good fit for me. Wasn't really enjoying it. And I always knew in the back of my mind, I wanted to do something in real estate. Had a lot of friends from the New York area, California, that were successful, that were always talking to me about real estate, trying to help me invest. And it was always something that I wanted to do. But, as we've all heard many times, just to get into it is the difficult part, right? To figure out what you want to do, how to get into it, what should you do for your first deal, how to start. That's like the most challenging part that in my whole journey is just where do you start and how do you get in, right? So I had no idea what I do. But I was listening to a podcast, which, obviously podcasts are very powerful and can change people's lives. I listened to a podcast called Bigger Pockets and heard, someone local here in Dallas got interviewed. I reached out to him afterwards. And, funny enough, he got like 500,000 views on YouTube on the podcast. And like thousands of people messaged him saying, I want to work for you. I want a job. I want this. And I messaged him too. And I was like, hey, I'll work for free. Just want to learn about real estate. I'm here, working in a nursing home, but want to get out. And he messaged me back on Bigger Pockets that have like a messaging platform. And he said, send me your resume and, we'll take it from there. My resume didn't have much on it, right? I was basically, a rabbi, outreach rabbi, and 1 year working in a nursing home. That was my, it wasn't an extensive resume, but he looked at it and then he said, I want you to take this personality assessment test. And I was like, okay, I took the test. And then a day later, he said, I want you to come meet me. I was like, all right. At this point, I had no idea how many people had been reaching out or what was going on. So I came and met him, and on the spot, he said, I want you to do acquisitions. I see that your personality and what you've been doing in outreach and, the skill set that you have, you'd be great at, negotiating, meeting with sellers, building rapport with them, building trust. So he's like, you want to start on Monday? This is a Thursday. And I was like, well, I have an exam coming up. I can take off a couple weeks from work and, study for my exam, and come, try out working for you. And if it works out, I'll stay. So I started Monday, and that was it. So I started doing just, it wasn't cold calling. It was like all warm leads from postcards and text messaging, but just getting on the phone, talking to sellers, driving out, it was all DFW and surrounding areas. So driving, anywhere between 15 minutes to an hour and a half to go meet people. And
this was for buying properties proprietarily. This was for listings. Like,
this is mostly wholesaling, but some of them we bought. But single family, off-market properties, mostly distressed. People who needed to sell them quickly, or houses that were in really bad condition. So we send out $25,000 a month in postcards, and that brought in 10 to 20 deals a month.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that was the last thing I thought that I would do in real estate was wholesaling, because you always hear, negative connotations with wholesaling, and, how the, people look at it as you're taking advantage of people or whatever. I mean, we tried really to help people out that were in difficult situations. They're difficult probate issues, or people who have 7 different heirs to the property and they can't locate them, and people who just don't have money to repair the house and need to get rid of it ASAP before they go into foreclosure. So it was definitely a learning experience, and it helped me. It was a foot in the door. For about a year, I didn't do anything other than that. And then that led me to think, hey, if we're wholesaling these properties to end buyers, and they're making, we're making 10, 20 grand on the assignment, and they're making 30, 40 on the flip, why can't I do both of them? Right. So I was like, all right, I want to try a flip out. No clue what I was doing. No clue how to renovate a home or do an inspection or, properly underwrite, run comps and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, all right, time to figure it out. Let's do something else. So I got my real estate license. I bought one house, and I did pretty good for the first flip. And I was like, okay, I could do more of these. So started doing some flips. And then I was like, I want to have some rentals too. Besides for the quick cash, I want to have properties that are, Dallas-Fort Worth area has been appreciating for a long time. And I was like, I want to hold on to properties for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, so started acquiring slowly a couple of properties every year for rentals, and just, learning new things and growing and constantly wanting to do more in the real estate space. So.
Well, and that's, I think we've talked about this. It's like always how you evolve, like you hit certain points or goals, and you're like, now what's the next challenge? Like, how do I grow this business even further?
Well, listen, it's interesting story, Eden. I think even more interesting is that you have something that super niche, like not a lot of people are out there saying I'm a cost segregation specialist. I'd like to really, and I'm sure our audience would really like to understand, and we've spoke before, and obviously we use you, but I would like you to explain it to me again, if you could, because it's such an interesting topic and there's so much value in what you do. And I'm sure that, seeing on the screen here, cost segregation expert, nobody really knows what you do, most people.
Okay, let's reveal the secrets then.
We actually should have did that first. And I think that's what we should do in the future, Frank, because that is super interesting, I think.
Okay. All right, we can edit it, I guess. So I got into cost seg about 2 years ago. So, like you said, it's something that a lot of people don't know about. It's not, it's becoming more popular over the past few years, with 100% bonus depreciation, which we'll talk about. It became a lot more appealing and more known over the past few years. But it is something that, even in my story, I was buying rental properties and I had never heard of this. And I was not accelerating any of the tax benefits that I was entitled to. And a lot of people are not. You'd be surprised. Once in a while, I'll get on CoStar and cold call some local people here in Dallas or some mobile home park owners. And when I say, the first thing that I usually say to people is, I'm calling you out of the blue, but just want to see who you use for your cost seg reports, right? And, they listen up right when I say that and they say, what are you talking about? And I know if they don't know right away when I say, who do you use for your cost segregation, there's an opportunity there, right? So if they don't know what the term is, then we can start a conversation. So you'd be surprised. I know investors that have been buying mobile home parks for literally 25 years. I have clients now that I met at conferences or called or someone referred to me that have bought tens of 30, 40, 50 parks and have never done a cost seg study, and they pay taxes every year, right? And there are ways that they could not be paying taxes. So it's not a given. I always say this. It's not like, don't assume, like Frank was mentioning before, that your CPA does it or your CPA is super savvy. I mean, some CPAs are great and they know real estate and they'll recommend the cost seg company, or you come to them and say, hey, I want to do this cost seg. They understand it. They're all for it. But a lot of them don't know about it or are not so savvy, and, don't assume that it's being done unless it's being done.
So, and for those that are listening that aren't familiar, when you go and you buy a property, you're not just buying that property, right? So really, it's the property that you're buying is a sum of parts, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe you want to explain a little bit about that and how that works in the process with, depreciation before you even get to the bonus depreciation, right, which I think is a huge thing. So you want to explain like the parts that make up the transaction.
Okay, so one step before that is any piece of real estate that you own, right, besides for your personal residence, is considered investment real estate, right? So anything that's investment real estate, like you mentioned before in your top 4 reasons to buy real estate, one of them is appreciation, right? You're hoping that year over year, the value of the property is going up, right? But in addition to that, the property naturally deteriorates, right? Nothing stays perfect forever. And there's going to be CapEx, things are going to break, a roof is going to fall off, the AC is going to go out, right?
Except me.
Yeah, exactly. You're 25?
Yeah.
So things tend to deteriorate, right? So we hope at the same time the value is going up, the IRS understands that the property is going to deteriorate and you're going to need to put money in to keep that property looking good and rent it out, right? So we have what we call depreciation, right? That's a key word here, depreciation. Depreciation means your property is going to appreciate, but the IRS understands that you can take tax benefits because of the depreciation. It's going to go down in its condition. So you have certain tax incentives to, kind of offset the money that you're going to have to spend to upkeep the property, right? So on residential property, your property depreciates over 27 and a half years, right? Which means the example I always give is if you buy a property for $1 million, assume about 15 to 20% is allocated to the land, right? The whole land thing, maybe we can get into it later. It's a whole nother topic. I don't know what the land value is, but let's just assume your land value, the raw land, which means if you took a match and you burnt down your property till, a crisp and it was just bare grass or bare concrete, your property, would be worth about 80% of what you paid for it is in the infrastructure and 20% is in just the raw land. So the land itself is not going to depreciate because the dirt is the dirt, right? So the tax code says you cannot depreciate the value of the land, right? So that's normally about 15 to 20%. So if you buy a property for $1 million, assume you're about 850 in depreciable basis, right? So that's your piggy bank of depreciation for the next 27 and a half years on a residential property. So quick calculation, you just take 800 divided by 27 and a half, and that's the amount of depreciation you're going to get every year, right? If it's a commercial property like a hotel, office building, restaurant, retail, strip center, those depreciate over 39 years. So the same situation, 100,000 less.
And you know why? It depreciates over 11 and a half years longer than the residential building? Why? Because Congress says so. Next.
Well, do you have a reason?
Yeah, because the IRS says so. That's the only reason.
Well, I would. My guess would be is that there's more wear and tear on a residential property than there is on a commercial property. I mean, you could argue both ways, but people live in a house 24 hours a day. Usually, commercial office buildings, retail, they shut down for half the day, right? Whereas a residential property, I mean, maybe people are at work half the day, so they're not using the house. I don't know. That's just my theory, but I could be wrong on it. But I mean, the whole concept of where they got 27 and a half and 39, I mean, that, I don't know. I don't think we'll ever know where they came up with those numbers. It was just a bunch of dudes in a room saying, what do you think? What do you think? Okay, we vote 27 and a half, right? So I don't know. I'll leave it to them to decide that.
But what other than the building, like what else is included in that purchase, right? Because there's other things other than just the building, whether it's residential or commercial.
Right. So essentially what we're trying to do is after we establish what the land is worth, what your basis is, if it's a commercial or residential property, right? So if you do nothing and you tell your CPA, hey, we bought this property, you're going to be taking what we call straight line depreciation, right? So the first year is prorated. Important to know, if you buy a property, some clients of mine, they buy a property in December and they think they're going to get a full year of depreciation before bonus. The first year is prorated. So if you buy $1 million property on December 20th, you're basically getting no depreciation for that year, right? People think I got to close before the end of the year for the tax benefits. If you're doing a cost seg study and taking bonus, yes, that will help you. But if you're not, you get very little amount in the first year, right? So it is calculated based on when you bought the property. So if you don't do any cost segregation, it's going to be straight line depreciation. Now we get into how can we accelerate and get more tax benefits up front, right? We want to, if the IRS is telling us you can take a lot more up front, we'd rather do that than wait 27 and a half or 39 years. So like you were mentioning here, what we're doing essentially is we're breaking down every single inch of any property, any mobile home park, office building, hotel. We're basically, the example I give that's really easy to understand is just imagine the room that you're sitting in or the building you guys are sitting in right now is made out of Lego blocks, right? And we just took a hammer, smashed the entire thing into a billion pieces. Our job as cost segregation engineers, CPAs, experts is to put all that into three different buckets. The structural property, right, which is, in your case, the foundation, the walls, the roof, all those items that cannot be accelerated. So those are going to stay in your office building on a 39-year depreciation schedule. And then we have the 5-year personal property, right? If you have those couches in there, the TV, if that was all included in the purchase of the building, your window shades, your light fixtures, is that tile flooring or is that laminate? Looks like it's tile, right? So it depends on the type of flooring. Tile, most of the time, is considered structural. If it was like a vinyl flooring, it would be a 5-year asset. The appliances, the cabinets, the rods, all those items would be 5-year personal property. And on the exterior, if you guys have parking spaces or fences or, cameras, a lot of items on the exterior would be, if you guys have a pool back there, I don't know if you guys do, a pickleball court, something like that. All those items, just think anything that was added to raw land would be considered a land improvement, and those depreciate over 15 years, right? So in your office building, as opposed to waiting 39 years to depreciate your parking lot, right? Which could be $200,000 or 300, depending on the size of your parking lot. You could be getting that with bonus depreciation or over 15 years or sooner, as opposed to 39 years.
It's a huge difference.
And what about when it comes to mobile home parks, right? Like there's some added stuff, right?
Yeah.
An understanding of different from a building.
Okay, we're going to mobile home parks. So mobile home parks, I've seen people tell me, and it's shocking that, oh, my CPA told me you can't do cost segregation on mobile home parks, or I didn't think you could do this. And where does that come from? My opinion is that people think that it's just land, right? Like raw land. If you buy a piece of raw land, you have a ranch and you're going to, develop, put some infrastructure on it. You buy a raw piece of land, 50 acres out in the country. You can't do a cost seg study on it because it's just land, right? Mobile home parks are as close as you can get, in real estate to like raw land. There obviously are roads and pads, and every park is different, but for some reason there's a misconception out there that, oh, you can't, it's basically just land. There's no buildings or anything to cost seg, right? And it couldn't be, it's exactly the opposite of that, right? Because there's no infrastructure, because there's no buildings, right? The less buildings you have, Frank might know this by now, seeing different studies that we've done. If you look back at properties that you've acquired and you did cost seg on, if you have a mobile home park that has a leasing office, that has a clubhouse, that has public bathrooms, the more buildings there are on the property, if it has some stick-built homes and some, the more houses or whatever it has on it, the less, bonus depreciation and accelerated depreciation you're going to get, because the more buildings you add, the more 27.5 property we have. We have the foundation, we have the walls, the drywall, the roof, the HVAC, all that stuff can add up. So the most, accelerated depreciation you're going to get on a mobile home park is really a park that's just like pads and homes. Like that's it. In that case, you have super high numbers for bonus depreciation.
Eden, correct me if I'm wrong, but if the sewer lines or the septics or the parking pads, which eat up a lot of your capital, your capital when you're buying it, those are land improvements, right? That's not the land, and that can all generate bonus depreciation, correct?
Correct. Most of the park is, if you have a park that has no park-owned homes, right? 0 park-owned homes, you're going to be seeing a massive amount, somewhere between 50 and 75% of what you paid for, maybe even in the 80s, is land improvements, right? So you're buying a park for $1 million, less, let's call it 20% for land. So out of that 800,000, could be 70 to 80% of that. If there's no buildings on the property, 70 to 80% or more, I've seen in the 90s, could be land improvements. Because what are you paying for when you're buying that park? What is the value? Like, why are you giving the owner of that property $1 million? What is the value of what he's providing to you, right? After we take away the raw land, it's the infrastructure, it's the roads, the pads, all this other stuff. So that's the value. When you buy the office building that you're sitting in, why are you paying $1 million for that office building you're sitting in right now? It's because there's drywall and there's studs and there's a roof and there's HVAC and the foundation and all that other stuff, which makes up roughly 75%. So it's almost the opposite. The building that you're sitting in right now, if we did a cost seg study on it, you'd probably have the inverse of that. You'd have about 25% of accelerated depreciation and 75% where we can't touch. So it's almost the reverse.
So we'll break this down because there's 2 segments to this depreciation for those that are listening out there, right? So the first point that investors should take a look at when they're looking at the mobile home park space as an investment, if nothing else, right? Because the bonus is the bonus. But if nothing else, when you're buying a mobile home park, you have opportunity for accelerated depreciation because the vast majority of what you're going to be acquiring outside of the land is the land improvements, right? Is going to be the roads, is going to be the pads, is going to be the sewer, the septic lines. That's all land improvements, which is subject to accelerated depreciation 15 years rather than 27 and a half years. So if nothing else, you have accelerated depreciation there.
Correct.
But recently, right, because of the tax, because of the Trump tax code, right, you have bonus depreciation. And so we have a little bit of a timeline left on that. So maybe you want to explain that, Eden, why right now buying a mobile home park with those land improvements is even better, because I think that's something that people need to know and people need to be aware of currently.
Yeah. So I always say it's 3 stages. The bare minimum is straight line depreciation, right? And that's still good, right? It's still good to have tax benefits every year, even if they're small, better than nothing. Then you have accelerated depreciation, like you're mentioning, your parking lot, 15 years over 39 years. Obviously, you're 2xing or 2.5xing your tax benefits, taking it a lot earlier, right? And then the icing on the cake, the best of the best, is bonus depreciation, like you mentioned, which is any property that was purchased between 2018 and 2022, right? Purchased, not the time of the study. So we can be sitting here in 2024 and you're like, oh crap, I never heard of this cost segregation. This is the best thing since sliced bread. I got to go back and look at all my properties and, see if this makes sense. If you go back and do a look back study, we can purchase between 2018 and 2022, you can still get 100% bonus, right? Obviously, we're going to have to calculate how much depreciation you've taken over the past few years, but you can still, suck out a nice amount of, I'm doing one that I got in yesterday that was purchased in 2018 that they're doing the look back study on. So that is 2018 through 2022 was 100% bonus depreciation. What that means is all of your 5 and 15 year assets, right? The 2 buckets that we were talking about before, anything that's non-structural, you can take 100% of that in the first year. So now we're not waiting 15 years to depreciate the parking lot in your office building. We're taking all of that, 100% of your parking lot in the first year, which is insane, right? It doesn't make any sense to me, but it's part of the tax code, so we use it, right? You can do an entire parking lot of $200,000 in the first year. And a mobile home park, the numbers are through the roof. You can buy a park for $1 million and you can have $700,000 in first year depreciation.
And if you, as the individual, don't use it all in 1 year, right? You can that depreciation carries over for you, and for the investor, that shields the last bit of income that comes into them, right? So, typically, if you're at the highest tax bracket, that's going to lower your tax bracket from there. So it starts from the last monies you made, right? So if you have a $50,000 carryover depreciation, it's the last $50,000 you made, which may lower you into another. Not only you're not paying taxes,
right,
it also lower you into a lower tax bracket income-wise. Correct?
You got it exactly. Yeah. So that's 2018 through 2022. In 2023, it went down to 80%. So 80% of your 5 and 15 year can be bonus depreciated in the first year. The other 20 would go into its regular category. So the 5 year would be the 20% that you couldn't take would be over the next 5 years. And the 20% of your 15 year would go over the next 15 years. And now we are in 2024 and it is currently 60% bonus depreciation. So, we're at a crossroads right now. There was a bill that you probably saw earlier in the year, February, March, that was proposed to bring back 100% bonus depreciation retroactive to 23, 24, and to move forward to 25. It was looking really promising, and there was a lot of buzz on LinkedIn and all over social media about that passing. It passed the House, and it was going to, hit the Senate, and it never did. And at this point, we're basically at a standstill. And my opinion is this is going to depend on the elections. So it depends on who's going to win the election. And if we see that 100% bonus depreciation coming back, which we all want as real estate investors, we want to see that come back.
So not to say who Eden's voting for, but he does wear a hat that says "Make cost segregation great again."
That's
So I'm just saying, I'm not going to sit there. We're not getting political, but he does wear a hat that says "Make cost segregation great." Right?
I want you to send that to me as a gift for being on the show.
And the interesting thing about Eden, right, which is great, because I know that there's been obviously more talk about cost segregation over the last few years. Him and Madison SPECS they have specifically focused in the manufactured housing space, right? Like, and I don't know any other, and we've gone to, I've seen you at like 3 or 4 different, shows at different spots. They're the only cost segregation. So here you have an industry that is ripe for this, and not to blow up your marketing spot here for everybody that's listening.
I'm done.
If there's other cost segregation experts out there that are listening to this program. However, he's the only one, their group is the only one that's always out there, and they have gotten a nuance or knowledge, special based knowledge in this specific industry, right? So there's probably other people who do cost segregation, but understanding the space, understanding the nuances of the space, and being able to maximize what you have here is key. So if you're going to go for a cost segregation person, you want to know that person is expert. Like, I wouldn't go to a neurologist to check my heart, right? So you want to go to someone who knows knows the nuances of the space.
Yeah, we've done, just so you know, I've done probably over 100 mobile home and RV parks in the last 12 months myself, and as a company, probably close to 400 in the last 12 months. So there are, like you said, there are a lot of nuances, and I get some interesting scenarios. Yesterday, I got some crazy cases that I'm trying to decipher. We have great CPAs and engineers on our team, and not everything is always clear cut. There's always random scenarios that people are buying into an existing LLC in a mobile home park, and they've been depreciating it, and now there's a capital investment into buying out part of the LLC and how they depreciate it. And I have yesterday an interesting question that's still, I'm still working on today is, I have a park that is all city infrastructure, right? It's all the roads, the sewer, everything belongs to the city, right? And he basically essentially is buying the pads, and it's all park-owned homes, right? And his plan is to sell all the park-owned homes over the next 2 to 4 years. So he's wondering, do I bonus depreciate the homes if I'm going to be selling them? And how much depreciation can we get if we don't own the roads or any of the infrastructure? All we own is really the dirt and then the pad, and what the value of that is going to be. So there's always something new, new situation that we can figure out and help out with. And I always tell people, make sure, especially in the mobile home park space, you're working with a cost seg company that understands the nuances, like you said, because there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes on in this space.
Sure. And we've done probably now about 7, I think we've done about 6, 7, 8 deals that we've done together. My question to you is, if someone's interested in this or wants this, when is the best time for you to get involved in the process, right? When should they be reaching out to you? Is it after they close on it? Is it before? Like, when do you find that it works best for them to reach out to you?
So the best time is while you're under contract. Due diligence period, not the day you sign a contract, but as you get a little bit further along, the analysis is free, right? We all like free things. And, there's no harm in reaching out and saying, obviously things can change while you're under contract. The purchase price can change, or it can get delayed 3 months or whatnot. But the best time, especially if you're raising capital for it, your investors are going to want to know, if I invest, $200,000 and I'm getting whatever, a 5% stake in this property, what is my first year depreciation going to look like? So I recommend reaching out ASAP after a property is under contract. You get the projection, you calculate that. We can help you calculate it if you want to know dollar for dollar if somebody invested in the deal. We'll help you work on that. and be able to present it to your investors. And there are times where I have clients that are, either they're not interested or they're not savvy. And I just say, hey, tell your client, your potential investor, to call me, right? I'll do the work for you. You can call me. I can walk you through what this looks like, how you apply it. I'll even talk to them about their personal situation. Are you a real estate professional? Do you have other passive investments? Ask them the key questions on how they can utilize this, because this all sounds great, but it's not for everybody, right? There are situations where you're a doctor or a lawyer and you have no other passive investments, and there are times where cost segregation doesn't make sense for you, right? That doesn't mean that you shouldn't invest in a deal. It's not solely for the depreciation benefits, but there are times where doing a cost segregation, if an individual buys a property, does not make sense. I have people with single family homes or office buildings reaching out to me all the time. I'll ask them 5 or 10 questions, and then I'll tell them, hey, if I were you, I wouldn't do the study here. There's no value. You're not going to be able to apply it. If you want your CPA to give us a call or talk to one of our CPAs, if they have other ideas, we're open to it. But, we're here to help everyone. My passion is to keep more money in your pocket, your investors' pockets, everyone. We work hard. We want to keep as much money, hard-earned money, that we can. We're not doing anything illegal here, right? This is the tax code. I'm not trying to tell you to scam the IRS out of money. Use the tax code if you're in real estate to keep more of your hard-earned money in your pocket. That's my goal.
100%. And Eden, if anybody listening out there, they want to reach out to you, they want to find out more, what's the best way they should contact you?
There aren't too many Eden Markowitzes in the world. That's first place. And I don't think there are too many Eden Markowitzes that are cost seg experts. So I don't think it's going to be that difficult to find me. I'm on LinkedIn, Eden Markowitz, Facebook. I use Facebook a lot, especially the mobile home park space is very active on RV and mobile home park groups on Facebook. So you can send me a message on Facebook, LinkedIn, email emarkowitz@madisonspecs.com. And those are the best ways to reach me. But I'm pretty active. I'm on social media every day, responding to messages, looking in groups, seeing what deals are trading, try to be, especially in this space, like you mentioned, I would say mobile home and RV parks is about 80% of my business, although I do short-term rentals, offices, hotels, other things come up. But where I spend most of my time, energy, conferences, like you say, is in this space, because frankly, I love the people. I love the community. It's just been very refreshing to meet amazing people like you guys. And it's so down to earth, and people are genuine. They care about each other. I don't find like a lot of like negative energy and competition between people. Everyone seems to get along. And I look forward to the conferences because they're just great people and people that are fun to hang around. So
Let's just say thanks a lot, Eden. This was, I think there's a lot of value in what you do. I think we could probably dive into this topic really deep. I think maybe having him back on the show for something more specific where we can really dive a little bit deeper. I think, I enjoyed this conversation a lot, and we've found great value in knowing you. And thanks a lot for being here.
All right. I think we'll do a deeper dive when I'm in New York next time. We'll come down to the studio.
You let us know, Eden. We have, we have good food here. We would love to see you and have you in the studio. Frank don't have a lot of friends that comes visit him.
He doesn't have a lot of friends, period, right?
Nah, he's got some.
So, and to summarize, man, and I think Eden said,
I'm only kidding. Got no fun.
All right, last question, Eden. Really, who's more amazing, Eric or Frank?
Well, I know Frank for a lot longer, so I'm going to have to go with Frank here. Or, I don't know you that well, but you could be awesome.
So to surmise, right? And I think what we've gotten out of here, it's not just what you make, it's what you keep, right? And so part of the process for any investor is not only knowing the cash flow, not only watching the principal reduction or the appreciation that you create or the value you create. It's how you keep what you make through the tax benefits of real estate. And this is one of the training tools that we're giving you here on the MHP Exchange program. If you've liked this program, please rate it on Spotify or iTunes. Give us a comment, drop us a line. Check out the MHPExchange.com where you can find opportunity news, education, entertainment. If you want to see what it's like on the ground, go to our Instagram page at the MHPExchange.com and you can see some pictures of us on the ground, the things that are happening in the space. Or if you want to watch our video series and see what it really takes to turn around a trailer park, go watch us on YouTube at Trailer Park Turnaround.
Eden, nice talking to you, man.
Pleasure. Thank you, guys. We'll see you soon.
Until next time, this has been the MHP Exchange. Thank you for listening.